Hey everybody, with the Consumer Technology Association, I'm Tyler Suiters. We own and we produce CES. It is the biggest and most influential tech event on the planet. And this week on CES Tech Talk, fifth generation cellular technology. But I bet you know that much better as 5G. That's the terminology we're all using right now in the industry. It's about connectivity, one of the driving trends of our time. And 5G is going to deliver this in ways some of us can't imagine. We're talking about networks that will be up to 100 times faster than we have today, and also 5 times more responsive. 5G will be the platform for innovation, things like self-driving vehicles, smart cities, AR, VR, digital health. 5G is going to deliver what's next, now. One of the leaders in Wi-Fi technology and wireless networks is also a key player right now in the emerging 5G field. That is Boingo Wireless. And joining us today from California is Dr. Derek Peterson. He is Chief Technology Officer at Boingo, where he's responsible for technical vision and strategy. Derek, good to have you with us. And I'd imagine technical vision and strategy very much apply to where 5G is for you right now.
Yeah, you have that right. You know, the growth of wireless networks continues, and making sure that you're ahead of all the new technologies to be successful is a very important part of my job and something that I work on daily.
Where do you start with a definition of 5G? And I'd ask you to frame it for more of your B2B audience there for Boingo. Beyond saying fifth generation, where do you take it from there when you're giving the elevator pitch about what this is?
Yeah, to me, it's about having the right connection at the right time and being able to augment that connection to be able to develop and create advanced connectivity solutions. Like we've heard many people talking about, fast speeds for doing things in a quick manner, like VR and AR that's highly talked about, or low latency, which is also a very important thing for being able to interact without having delay. And I think that's really what 5G is about, is it's about improving the immersion of our digital and our physical world together, that immersive experience that we're trying to create with a connected world.
Now, take that a layer deeper then for businesses you're dealing with. What's the sub-headline there if it goes beyond just anytime, anywhere connectivity and much lower if a virtual absence of latency? Where do you go from there when you're getting in the weeds?
Yeah, I think where you're going is you're creating an opportunity where we're immersed into those experiences instead of having to try to find those experiences by staring at our phones or being involved with, I have to look down here at my phone to be able to look up that experience that I want to enjoy at a game and know facts that, we're trying to do with voice activation by asking Google and Alexa. We're having to actually verbalize those questions of, hey, what's the LeBron shooting percentage at the free throw line right before he's making a shot, instead of being able to look at LeBron and be able to see that and say, oh, here's his stats for being able to make that shot. And here's his heart rate as he's about to be able to attempt that shot. It's really about creating that greater experience.
I assume it's pure coincidence that you're checking in from Los Angeles, home of the Lakers, and you just happen to use LeBron James as a reference point, right?
Exactly. I mean, we're very excited about him being here, as you would imagine.
So I mentioned Boingo's history in the Wi-Fi sector and really just touched on it because you are such a leader in the corporate sector. Where is Wi-Fi's role with 5G? Is this a coexistence? Is this a synergy? How do you mesh the two in your mind?
Yeah, for us, I shared about 2 years ago this manifesto, a call for convergence, and it was our vision, and it maintains our vision, that merging licensed, unlicensed, and shared networks provides a better experience. And so for us, Wi-Fi cellular, whether it be licensed cellular or shared cellular like CBRS or unlicensed cellular like Multifire, all of these technologies work together to create a larger pool of airwaves, thereby creating more lanes for those wireless connections and resulting in less wireless congestion and that better connected experience.
One of the terms I hear associated with 5G is that it's going to be, and already is becoming in many senses, Derek, a platform for innovation. That is, 5G is going to enable such rapid advancements and applications across self-driving vehicles, across smart cities. You name an emerging technology sector, and it's going to ride on the back of 5G. Do you agree with that statement? Would you amend it at all or see it evolve a bit?
I think one of the things about the wireless industry is innovation has been there for a long time and continues to grow. When you start thinking about IoT and all the devices that are coming on, billions of devices that are trying to get connected. I mean, we're connecting our lights, our homes, our lives, our cars, everything to be able to find that additional information and or that better immersive experience of combining that physical and digital world. And I think that as we start thinking of 5G, it does promise some of that if we can get to those speeds. But an important part of that is recognizing one of the things and one of the core things of 5G is recognizing the need to converge all of these different networks together. One of the challenges I always have is there's different players who are pushing different technologies. And for us to really take advantage and have a seamless connected society, we need to have a collaboration of all of these technologies. And I think that that's where we see the world going. And when we look at 5G, it's a little bit different than maybe a cellular person who's a vendor who's focused on licensed technology. They're going to end up pushing it towards that definition. And a Wi-Fi guy is going to push it towards a Wi-Fi definition, 802.11ax, and some of the new technologies coming out there. Whereas when we look at it, we really look at it for our venues and the customers that we have really having that commitment to that convergence at every level so that we can end up delivering the true value of what 5G is going to bring.
Well, I want to take that term convergence, Derek, and run with it a little bit because in that response, you're talking about various verticals who are involved in this that are separate but connected, and that's a kind of a ham-handed way to describe it on my end. And I'm going to use a really boring business term, which is stakeholder engagement. But how critical is that to the development of 5G nationally? Just speaking of here in the U.S., identifying the other stakeholders, whether that's manufacturing, whether that's distribution, whether that's all the way downstream on usage, and working together on this, or is this purely a competitive play?
For who?
Anybody.
For all the stakeholders?
Anybody in that 5G value chain, right?
Yeah, I don't see it as a competitive play. I see it as a collaboration opportunity for all the stakeholders. What we're finding is working in our neutral host approach to be able to bring connectivity to venues. And we need all of our partners. We need all of our venues. We need all of the stakeholders to work together. And it goes beyond just the ones in the business sector. It also goes, obviously, into the political sector where, in the past, and we continue to be held up sometimes by, laws or the FCC that keep us from being able to deploy networks. And we're working towards that, as you know, with the recent push by, the political arm to speed up the deployment of 5G. That's a very important part of the ecosystem, as well as recognizing that this is really going to take the collaboration of all of the stakeholders to pull it off, because you're going to technologies that require smaller cells. So they're going to have this overlay network, which is what we're used to today, which stretches, 30 miles perhaps on a single macro tower. But you're also going to have this underlay network, which is going to be made up of many small cells. And some of those small cells, when you start getting up into the millimeter wave, might be, very direct or very pointed. Or if you get into things like Wi-Fi, which is using light spectrum to be able to provide Wi-Fi, that's line of sight. And so as you start bringing all these different kinds of connections in, they're going to have to collaborate because each of them is going to be a part of that entire wireless ecosystem providing that connectivity.
So when you look at the whole ecosystem, and this is more of a personal question maybe than a professional question, Derek, but what are the innovations that you are most excited about? Is there a particular sector or application that really gets you going in terms of the possibilities and potentials, whether it's for consumers or businesses or both?
Yeah, I guess, I'll share a couple answers there. From a personal perspective, I'm excited about what's happening in the biological sense. I'm a big use, my Garmin watch and these fitness watches you use that keep track of, your health. I even have a chip embedded in my hand, and a near field communication chip or a Bluetooth chip embedded in my hand that allows me to interact with my home and with my environment. And I think from a biological standpoint, having had a sister who was paralyzed and lived her life, in a wheelchair, there were some things that, we can do today that weren't possible in the past that will end up improving the experiences for everyone, no matter, what, biological or physical elements that the world might bring upon them. So personally, I think that that's an area that's exciting and, not an area that I'm highly engaged in, but personally, it's very important. From a Boingo perspective or from a business perspective, one of the other areas I really see is the social and economic capabilities that wireless brings to a connected society. There's cases where smart homes, smart cities, and those kind of capabilities really allow us to break down barriers that exist there in our social and economic development in areas like what's going on in Africa and areas what's going on in certain areas of cities where they're getting connectivity where they didn't have connectivity to be able to bridge some of those social and economic challenges. So I think that's another exciting area as we move more connectivity, providing that to individuals. We're not just changing and improving wireless, we're really changing and improving lives.
Yeah,
and that's exciting.
So social and economic benefits. Interesting path to follow, Derek, in the sense that as the digital economy grows all the time and is expanding into more and more areas of the world, not just other industries or sectors, you need to be connected to be viable economically or even from a deployability standpoint. Is 5G something of an equalizer in your mind? And that may be a geographic dependent answer, frankly.
Yeah, I think it can be. I think, one of the things that, we've seen on, some of the sci-fi channels we watch is the ability for somebody to participate in a conference call. We're doing it today. We're sharing this conversation over a podcast and over the internet, connecting on a phone. And imagine if we could do that digitally in person, so you can see a 3D out. I can see you just like I'm sitting in the room with you, and you can see me just like I'm sitting in the room with you there. And imagine the kind of opportunity that creates for people who are living in different areas or who want to be a part of that engaged, but they don't have the ability to fly and do all those in-person meetings. So I do think it's an equalizer. I see that 5G and having gigabit speeds is going to change the way we perform these kind of meetings that like what we're having today.
Well, that's a really creative example in the sense that a 3D image for interaction in person, a virtual hologram, if you will, I suppose is a simple way to express it. But that is a critical area where 5G's low latency is essential, right? I mean, this goes beyond just exceptional gaming experiences, right, or AR, VR experience and interaction. This could be a critical business need.
It could be a very exciting opportunity for us all.
Where does AI as a horizontal, not a vertical, but where does AI play into the future of 5G? Is it an enabler? Is it a beneficiary? Or maybe it's both?
I think it's both. We're taking advantage of AI. AI, one of the things I always talk about is, the precursor to AI for artificial intelligence was automation. And so automation enabled us to be able to see things and be able to automate those things. The AI takes that a step further where it's artificial autonomy, right? So once we get to that level where our networks are adjusting automatically to the changes in the environment. So, one of the challenges we deal with constantly in our networks is we deal with some networks in airports, for example. You all of a sudden have 300 people getting on or off of a plane all around one access point or one node, and then they're gone. And so do you end up building out a network so that all the time you have that capacity there? Or do you build an autonomous network that ends up providing that capacity when it's needed for those 300 people going on, about ready to get on the plane, and then it adjusts automatically back down to the 20 or the 10 people that are there afterwards? So that AI or that autonomy is very important, and that for the future of both 5G as well as I think for enabling the networks that we need to enable.
Let me rein it back in just a little bit now, Derek, in terms of what's possible and the potential into a little bit more of the immediate future. Are you comfortable making a prediction or an educated guess as to when 5G will, I'll say, arrive? You could probably put a more scientific term on it, but when it's here, when it's accepted, when it's broadly used.
It really depends on the definition for 5G, and I think that we're seeing some of the aspects of these enhanced immersive experiences today. There's a lot of locations where we're seeing that connectivity and the desire to do that happening. And so you're seeing, ordering food from your seat, and then the cameras that keep track, and you say, hey, I'm about ready to finish that drink or that food that I have, and it automatically reordering for you, the next round. And so there's some of those immersive things happening today, but I think it's really beyond 2020 when we start really taking advantage of that and moving beyond that. Our goal is, and one of the goals is to make sure that there is complete nationwide coverage by 2020, and I think it starts first with coverage, and then it moves from coverage into developing those immersive experiences. And there's going to be a lot of new innovative things coming out, and like you said earlier, that are going to really pioneer this new technology, just like we saw what happened with in 2007 when the iPhone was introduced, or our smartphones were introduced, and it pioneered this evolution or revolution of connectivity.
Dr. Derek Peterson is Chief Technology Officer at Boingo Wireless. A lot to be excited about here. Derek, thanks so much for your time today.
I appreciate your time, too. Have a great day.
So here at CTA, we take a lot of pride in how well we take sharp, crisp pictures of what is going on right now, today in the technology marketplace. But if I may say so, we're also pretty darn good at looking into the future, what is going to happen, what's on the way. And I think it's safe to say 5G is right between those 2 points, the present and the future. And joining us now to talk about that is our Vice President of Market Research, Steve Koenig. Steve, I don't know how we managed to catch you when you're not on your global travels, but I'm glad you're with us today.
Happy to be here.
All right, so 5G, as I said, it's about to be present, and it's very much going to be a part of the future. Give us an overview right now. Where are we? What are we looking at with 5G? And this is admittedly something that consumers probably aren't thinking about much.
Well, one thing that consumers are thinking about a lot is the performance of their data connection on their smartphones and so forth. So I think they're going to be really, really keen to upgrade to all the promise of 5G. but that's really just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. There's so much more when it comes to 5G, and I think it's helpful to just maybe back up a little bit and just review, like, what is 5G and why is it so important? Because it's much more than just the next generation in mobile broadband.
Right, and I think that's a great place to start, Steve. And when you talk about the promise, I'm going to put this very much in layman's terms, right, that I can understand. We're talking about ridiculously fast speeds compared to what we're used to, and much, much lower latency. All right, so two-pronged effect, but that then spreads out across the industry. So I'll let you pick it up from there now that I've given a 30,000-foot view.
Yeah, and in addition to faster speeds and lower latency, also greater capacity. And so attaching these kind of guide words of 5G to a lot of the super cool technologies that we love to talk about. I mean, you need lower latency for innovative technologies like self-driving vehicles. In fact, I'd revise that to no latency. We don't want them to hesitate for a second. And just thinking about just the millions upon millions of nodes that we already have on the wireless network today, when you think about smart cities and connected infrastructure and so forth, we're going to double down on that dynamic. So we're going to need the greater capacity that 5G renders. And the faster speed piece is where the rubber meets the road, if you like, for consumers when they want to download, a full season of whatever show from Netflix or something like that.
Well, I vote for Game of Thrones, but yes, whatever show you choose is fine. Double down is a term you say. To be clear, though, the data that will be generated by that doubling down is going to be exponential, right? If you get one smart city online and you are taking real-time input from pedestrians, from cars, from traffic lights, from weather patterns, from energy input and output, water usage, whatever it might be, 5G isn't necessarily a luxury, right? This is going to have to be a bedrock necessity for these things to function.
Yeah, I call it a key ingredient technology. And just like any kind of culinary recipe, you've got, if you're baking a cake, you're going to need flour. That is, unless you're making a flourless cake. But that's beside the point. Touché. Yes, it's going to be a key ingredient as we look into the future, pretty much into the next decade, when technologies like self-driving vehicles, when we have greater traction around smart cities. It's another way to think about it. It's almost like a prerequisite. We really need this technology for these innovations to truly advance into the marketplace.
So smart driving, self-driving vehicles, smart cities, advancements in resilience, advancements in sports technology in terms of stadiums and mass events. What else do you see as mixed in there? What will be the products of 5G, if that's the key ingredient, right? Sure.
Well, we've touched on a number of them, and the list is very long, so I don't want to use too much time just counting all the ways that 5G is going to help. Here's what I think is really important, is that if you think about all the disruptive innovation that we've witnessed in today's 4G LTE world, think about innovative services like Lyft and Uber, Airbnb. It's hard to imagine a service like Uber or Lyft operating in a 3G world. I mean, you'd almost have to summon your ride a day before you needed it. So
here's where I was. This is the restaurant where I needed you to pick me up 15 minutes ago.
Exactly.
Right.
So therefore, this is what's important, I think, about 5G is just given the wealth of disruptive innovation that we witnessed in a 4G world, imagine the kind of disruptive innovation that will be possible in a 5G world with all that speed, all that capacity, and almost no latency. It truly is going to be a wonder to behold, and that's what makes it so exciting to talk about. Even though, yes, we're talking about the 5th generation in wireless connectivity, it's not just about faster downloads on your phone. Yes, it is that, but so much more, and there's so much that we're not even talking about right now, but we will.
One of the benefits you get, Steve, from your very cool position, besides crunching all these numbers and having an excellent team with you,
is that's very cool, crunching numbers, yes.
For those of us who don't crunch well, maybe it is cool. But you also get the opportunity to talk to key players in the markets regularly, what they're seeing right now, what they're expecting. What is the corporate view that you see around 5G in those conversations?
Well, I think generally industry is very keen for all the reasons that we've been discussing, because it's going to enable a lot of various technologies, either at a personal level or like we've established citywide. And the carriers themselves, the Verizons, AT&Ts, T-Mobile, Sprint, and so forth, they're all quite keen on this as well. And in fact, we're already starting to see activity in the marketplace on that front, and not just here in the U.S., but elsewhere in the world, like South Korea, in China, and so forth. So it's important to also mention that 5G isn't just a U.S. thing. I mean, this is a real global initiative. But it is, coming back to the U.S., it is very interesting to see these early moves, because now, finally, although we've been talking about 5G for a couple of years now, we're finally seeing it manifest in the U.S. market.
When you talk about global leadership and the rest of the world, is it safe to say, or would you agree, Steve, that it's China, South Korea, United States in terms of the leaders, plural, but that China probably has a little edge on the U.S. and South Korea in terms of where the race to 5G stands right now?
Well, first off, add Japan to the list,
So
because
Japan's in
they've
there,
attached a number of initiatives, again, that 5G is kind of behind related to the 2020 Tokyo Games. So add Japan to that list. China is it is somewhat of a horse race, but I think all countries are very well positioned, and I don't really think it matters like who gets there first. Like I said, I mean there are services stood up now in the U.S. market by Verizon and AT&T for 5G. So it's less important like who gets there first and so forth. Really, it's that what are countries doing to allow this technology to come to market at a consumer level, at an enterprise level. But related to China, what's interesting there is, again, thinking of 5G as a key ingredient technology for a lot of other things. With their command economy, if they want something to happen, it's going to happen. And that's not true here in our democracy. We have a lot of debate about this, and there are regulations and so forth. So that's where maybe China might have some edge, is expediting the innovations thereof from 5G. But let's wait and see, because I think America is definitely committed to maintaining its leadership in a number of ways. And like I said, 5G is already up and running in different spots around the country.
All right. So in that vein, Steve, pulling the chronological scope a lot closer to us, okay? Maybe looking out to 2019, what are you projecting as far as 5G products hitting the market? And maybe that's not the right term. I'm thinking more of where the corporate perspective is becoming a touch point for us as consumers.
Sure. So deployments are, like I said, are already starting to take shape, and that's only going to expand in 2019. And it's really across three fronts. One is the consumer or mobile front. One is more like nomadic access, and what that means is like different hotspots. And then third is fixed wireless broadband, which is basically a fixed antenna in the home that picks up 5G signals, which ostensibly can be a replacement for existing wired or fiber home broadband connections. And to me, that's really, really significant, because what we're talking about here is a solution to bridging the digital divide, because it's just not economically feasible to run cable or fiber up into the mountains or way out into the rural countryside. And 5G has the potential to kind of just ameliorate that problem. And so right now we're starting to see deployments across those fronts here in the U.S.
So that gets into a key element of this, right? Anywhere, anytime connectivity. We as consumers demand it more than ever. We as municipalities or counties or states need it potentially more than ever. Part of it is civic. right? The city aspects that we talked about. Part of it is personal preference, but then there's also an economic aspect. I'm thinking about us as consumers, where you need these to work. You need these to be not just employed, but employable, to learn the skills, to exhibit the skills, to find out where your skills are needed.
Yes. And so 5G is a key ingredient for a long list of innovative technologies, self-driving vehicles as one of the bigger ones, but also a key ingredient for an innovation-led economy. And that ties back to what I said, thinking about all the disruptive innovation we've seen in a 4G world. Just imagine with a robust 5G network up and running across America, what kind of new business models and services, what kind of job opportunities will be rendered more uniformly and greater homogeneity across instead of just in more urban areas. It's really exciting to think about, and I think it will very much help America maintain its leadership edge on the global stage.
So paint that picture for us, Steve, based on your experience. And we're here in Washington, D.C., but you are from deep in the heart of Texas, a gentleman rancher, if you will. But all kidding aside, you spent time in rural Texas. So when you talk about the digital divide, the need for connectivity, the opportunities it brings, talk about how you see this changing life there in where your family's ranch is in Texas and what that means for folks out there.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, your only chance to get broadband connectivity is satellite in a lot of these places, in Texas and Nebraska and a lot of rural places. So 5G has the potential to just make that go away. But just thinking about all the benefits of connectivity and the fact that so many business decisions, so many consumer choices today are made with data and data behind that. You've got to have this connection. So I'm thinking the combines in the field are connected, and that's going back to a database that is analyzing the inputs or outputs, however you want to think about it, from the field and so forth. It's GPS. Maybe it's self-driving itself. And that's where you have greater automation, and that leads to greater benefits for the farmer, that he can think more critically. Drones, that these technologies, all this. That's why I say it's such a key ingredient that is going to make a lot of things possible in a lot of places that today it's a real challenge.
So what is a big challenge? And I'm going to keep using that ranch example. Not that you're actively ranching or a rancher, sir, but I know it's in the family background, the Koenig family. What will this enable that you don't have today down there? Again, just stretching out this example a bit further. Is it better mitigation for bad weather patterns? Is it stronger tracking and therefore better production of your head of cattle? What do you see?
Yeah, well, that's another thing. Thinking about just how things are done today, it's very analog. It's very analog because it has to be. Because why? Well, because you can't get a signal in a lot of places, or a very good one, or a reliable one. And not just farming or ranching or oil production or anything like that. I mean, you need reliable connections and so forth, and that's gonna, when you have that introduces a whole host of other benefits, and that introduces greater efficiencies, better choices, and maybe speed to market for products. And right now, it's a lot of landline. It's a lot of pencil to paper, and so just again greater automation. That's why I say this is not a benefit. This automation and robust connectivity, it is not, and it should not be just a benefit for urban areas, but for everywhere. And what all that sums up to is greater economic output for the U.S. And keeps us at the vanguard of innovation globally.
So I bragged all over your market research department's ability to look into the future with accuracy, right, with excitement, with enthusiasm. Among the sectors that we hear so much about regarding the benefits of 5G moving forward, industrial, automotive you touched on, telecom, healthcare as well. Putting on your futurist's cap, is there a sector out there that you're especially excited about, that you see vast transformation or vast opportunity, maybe more so than the others?
Well, I think you touched on one that I would also highlight, and that's health. And just with the faster speed and lower latency, just thinking about healthcare and a physician expert, maybe expert surgeon, can't be in 4 places at once, obviously. So with 5G and robotic operating systems and so forth, that surgeon could perform ostensibly complex procedures on patients located in 4 different cities across the U.S. From his office, if you like, all in the same day.
Or her office.
Or her office, that's right. And so that's just another example, and that's exciting. And then just greater access potentially to health, telemedicine, and so forth, and feeding in various metrics for the greater good, or just an individual patient. These are some really big benefits that 5G will help make possible, and just underscores the whole dynamic of tech for good.
So I would argue, Steve, that at CES every year, you're one of a handful of people that knows the ins and outs of the coolest technology to see, the most cutting-edge technology, the game-changing innovations, perhaps better than anyone, because you spend so much time navigating the floor. Where does 5G apply at CES? Where are you looking? What are the touch points that you're tracking?
Right. Well, I'm also, by the way, one of the people with the sorest feet at CES, I think, in a lot of ways. But yeah, so 5G...
You do awfully well in our team walking challenge, the daily step count.
So it's overlaying North Hall for automotive with self-driving vehicles. It's overlaying in Central Hall. It's really I think very similar to AI in that it's popping up pretty much everywhere.
It's a horizontal category.
It's a very horizontal category, and that's a great visualization and I think a very appropriate way to think about 5G and as say other ingredient technologies like AI, that these are horizontal in orientation and not necessarily vertically aligned. So I think attendees of CES 2019 will bump into 5G a lot of different places. I think a lot of different services brands will be talking about it. I expect to hear more on partnership fronts and more news around deployment of different technologies like self-driving vehicles as we get greater visibility to where these 5G networks will start to spring up in earnest around the country. But I also want to point out that with 5G, this is going to be a process. This isn't like an overnight, crews go out and do a bunch of work and then the sun comes up and all of a sudden we've got 5G nationwide. I mean,
right. We don't just start talking about being there with a capital T, right?
Exactly. So this is going to take several years, and it's going to be an unfolding saga. So I think CES is the touch point for the latest update on 5G and what's happening in the coming 12 months, and that'll be a narrative that unfolds out into the next decade.
All right. I want to wrap up, Steve, with one more example from you about excitement about the touch point for consumers. You have a football club that you follow passionately. I will let you briefly sketch your passion for them.
Wow. Well, my football club's Wolverhampton Wanderers, Wolves in the English Premier League. And wow, well, I've been following them for several years, but it's been tough, right? Because I don't live in England, and so I've been, I've tried in various ways to stay connected with the club and watch them, usually online through different services and so forth. And I'm passionate about Wolves, and this is another reason why I'm passionate about 5G, because I think that will help me stay connected with my club, watch the games. It'll have the greater capacity, so maybe that'll be an 8K These are some of the exciting things that I'm looking forward to on the sports front with my club.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going, Steve, is you are able to enrich your experience, not just as a sense of improving what's already there, that you will have less or no latency when you're streaming that game live, right? Or you could check on them whether you're here in an exceptionally hotspot-enabled office or you're out somewhere around the world on your business travels and connectivity might not be that great. It will get better and better. But there are also new things that are coming in, right, that this will enable you. Again, just in the sense of one fan of one Premier League club, several thousand miles away. But that's a touch point for consumers that you can really touch and taste and feel, if you will.
Yeah, so in some ways, maybe 5G helps make the world a lot smaller.
And maybe the Wolves a lot better.
A lot better as well.
Steve, looking forward to walking the halls together at CES coming up. Thanks for your time and expertise.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, next week, we are diving into the constantly evolving world of ad tech. So we'll talk to a journalist about where ad tech is heading in the media landscape and also how it's changing that platform, delivery, advertising, etc. And also one company that is very much staying ahead of the changes, not just where ad tech is right now, but where it will be in years to come. That's all next week on CES Tech Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. And a reminder, you'll want to subscribe to our podcast. That way you can catch every single episode as we lead up to CES 2019. And that includes all the episodes we'll bring you from the show floor in Las Vegas. On that topic, CES 2019 is January 8th to the 11th. And the information you need to attend and register and find out what's going on is all on our website, ces.tech. That's ces.tech. I am just sitting here talking into a microphone. The real stars of the show are with me in studio. Thank you both so much. Our excellent producer, Tina Anthony, and our outstanding engineer, John Lindsay. You all make this thing go. And thanks so much for joining us. You make us go too, in a way. I'm Tyler Suiters. Let's talk tech again soon.